Hi, folks, and welcome to Good Morning Cannabis. And I have my friend Mike Z here. Mike, you look very different. I think I've never seen you with so little hair, but that's okay. You're looking really clean cut. But before we even get started, tell us, because this is part of the tradition here, the craziest thing that ever happened to you, Mike. Craziest thing. You could say whatever you want, because this is to adults only.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Todd. And the craziest thing besides meeting you, the craziest thing, this one is quite easy for me. The craziest thing that's ever happened to me, and I tell this story in my book, but I had a freak accident when I was 23, where it was a Sunday afternoon. I was living in San Francisco. This was before the cannabis days when I was working at Google. I was about to go and hit the bong. And I said, my roommates, they don't smoke. Let me go open the window, be a nice roommate. I go to open the window and the glass and the window broke. The window shattered, sliced through my arm.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I had to go get emergency surgery. And, it went through muscle, nerve, and tendon. And, I had this emergency surgery. And when I wake up from it, the doctor goes, "You're the luckiest guy in the world." And I go, "What? What are you talking about? Like, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me." And he said, your nerve that got sliced through, there's a major artery that runs parallel to that nerve. It should have been sliced through. You would have bled out in minutes, but yours is like 2-3 inches away from where it's supposed to be. So you should probably be dead, but you're the luckiest guy in the world. And so I would say that's probably the craziest thing that's ever happened to me.
And I'm glad that your life was spared because you've done much, much good and much good to come. So, Mike, why don't you give us the way that you actually say your last name? Everyone calls you Mike Z from High New York, but how do you say your last name?
Sure, it's Michael Zaytsev. Zaytsev.
I love it.
Ukrainian name, Ukrainian Jewish. Yeah.
Love it. So I'm going to get right into some of the questions. There's two things I want to kind of talk to you about today. First is you actually wrote, I think you wrote more than one book. I saw more than one book. One is basically the Cannabis Business Book, and I did order it. I haven't read it yet. So there you go. Show that. You can get that on Amazon. You can get it either a Kindle version or hard copy. I've got both. So I give you
audio book.
There you go. And there's another one too. Isn't there one that's related to that?
So there's my earlier book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Cannabis, but that one's out of print now. And I would encourage everyone to just get the Cannabis Business Book.
Okay.
It's much better.
And tell us, a little bit about the book, what inspired you, and why people should actually get it. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So what inspired me? Well, it's funny. There's the pipe dream of I've always wanted to write a book. And then more practically, it was in the early days of High NY, which was an education and networking group in New York on cannabis topics for cannabis people. People kept asking me the same questions over and over again, which were mostly like, how do I get started? How do I start a cannabis business? How do I get a job in the industry? Where do I invest? And it was the same questions over and over. And I was by and large giving the same answers over and over. And I just said, you know what, let me write this down to save myself some trouble of having to say the same stuff over and over. And again, this was when I wrote the first book, it was 2016, I want to say. And so at that time, there was really nothing on the market like that, where there was a how-to cannabis business type book. And so the first book was really kind of the beta, if you will. And then when I saw the success and demand for that book, I really doubled down and put together what I think was a much more complete and robust offering in the Cannabis Business Book. And I'll also share that the inspiration or the model that I followed for it, and I know you're a Napoleon Hill fan,
Napoleon Hill. Yes.
Yep, it was Think and Grow Rich, which was basically, I kind of said to myself, look, I'm far from an authority on cannabis business, but I've been fortunate to meet a lot of people who are much more experienced and have much more knowledge than I do, and I have access to these people. So let me go and interview them and ask them, what does it take to succeed in weed? And so that's really the nature of the book is, I've done now over 100 interviews of different cannabis entrepreneurs, and I've condensed their wisdom plus my own experience now almost a decade in the industry and put it together as a activism book disguised as a business book.
Love it. Love it. That's great. So there's another project that you're involved in that I really want everyone to hear about, because when I heard about it the last time we spoke, it was really inspiring. Tell us about this new degree and what's all that about with LIM.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I recently joined LIM College as the academic director for their Business of Cannabis programs. So we are launching the first ever cannabis degree programs in New York State.
Awesome.
And we'll have both an undergrad and graduate degree program in the business of cannabis. And I'm super excited to be a part of it.
I'm really excited to take any of the interns that you want to come here and work in the cannabis practice at Saks. That would be great.
Absolutely.
So what inspired that? I mean, what was the catalyst for you to start that program with them?
Todd, honestly, it was either an accident or destiny or faith, whatever you want to call it. Because
one of the three options you got there. One, three, yeah.
I had, I'll be completely honest with you, I'd never heard of LIM College in my life. And even though I grew up in New York and have been in New York most of my life, it just so happened one night I couldn't fall asleep. So I'm laying in bed on my phone, and I think I'd gone through the whole internet at this point, and I'm still not asleep. And so I go, all right, let me go on LinkedIn and see what's happening in cannabis jobs in the tri-state area. Not really looking for myself, just kind of more for high and Y and just to see what's going on. And it just so happened that earlier that day, this opportunity was posted, and I saw this, and at first I was like, is this a scam? What is LIM College? What are, cannabis business degrees? What is this? And I read the thing and I said, wow, this sounds really interesting. I'm gonna throw in my resume, see what happens. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, here I am, and I, the truth is, it is my destiny.
Yep.
And I'll tell you how I know this, because the craziest thing I discovered, Todd, which is the first ever cannabis event that I went to now 8 years ago, where I got my first bit of cannabis education, was literally on the same block as LIM College, just on the other side of the street. And I had no idea until I was a couple of weeks on the job, and I just happened to walk by and I was like, wait a second, that's where it all began.
That's where it all began.
And so, I know that this was meant to be.
Yep, on the other side of the street. That's great. So if people wanted to learn more about LIM and this degree, where would they go? How would they find out?
Yeah, you could go on limcollege.edu/cannabis, and you'll see all the info about both the undergrad and graduate degree. And I'm super excited because in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start announcing some of the faculty members that we've brought in, that I helped bring in since I joined the team here. And I'm really excited because we got some great people, some regulators, some OGs, a great mix of professionals. And all the classes are going to be taught by active industry pros, people that I look up to and admire, and that I'd be excited to take a cannabis class with. So I think we're going to put together something that's going to be really exceptional.
Awesome. So last question before we kind of wrap it up. how did you actually get into the cannabis space?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that, Todd. I think I started as a high school kid consuming. I
Okay.
continued as a college kid consuming, and then as a young professional consuming. And again, it goes back to that event where
Right.
eight years ago now, I went to this meetup and I was a completely ignorant consumer, literally did not know anything about cannabis, the history, the science, none of it. Didn't know a thing about it other than I really enjoyed it. And at that event, I met some real activists, guys like Dana Beal, who had been fighting for cannabis freedom for decades. I met real medical patients. Prior to that point, I thought it was just like a joke. I had no idea any of the stuff that, endocannabinoid system, none of that. And I met some people who were justice impacted, who were immigrant kids like me in New York City, but because they had, grown up in a different neighborhood and were targeted for cannabis, they couldn't get financial aid, and it completely sidetracked their whole lives. And
Right.
so that was my first bit of cannabis education, and it completely transformed my life because that was, and that was about a year and a half after my accident where I almost died. And so
Right.
I was like back in the world, recovered. And, that was the moment when I went to that event and got some cannabis education. I said, this is why I'm alive. This is what I'm supposed to
Right.
do with my life. This is what I've been put on this earth to do, and I'm going to do it. And so, now that I'm in this position to spread cannabis education in a way like never before, I feel super duper lucky to be able to do this stuff. What else could I possibly be doing with my life that would be nearly as amazing? I don't know.
And I'm a big fan. So I'm a big fan of you, Mike Z. And for people to reach out to you, we know you have your website, highny.com. Is there any other way they could reach out on LinkedIn? We're not going to give your address so they can stalk you, but any other
On
way?
on LinkedIn is great. On social media at Hi Mike Z, HI Mike Z, and also himikez.com. Yeah, I'm easy to get a hold of. I love to hear from people, especially those who read my book and love the book. I love
There
to
you
hear from.
go. Amazon
So
reviews. Make sure you give a
that's right.
good review for
That's
Mike.
right. 5 stars or bust. No, I'm just kidding.
Stars or less. So look, Mike, it's been really enjoyable. It's good to see you. I like the new kind of light mic with a little bit less hair, but I'm just going to take the hair you gave up and put it on me. That's all. So,
There you go.
but
Well, thanks for
we'll
having me, Todd.
chat
I
again
really
real
appreciate
soon.
it.
So take care, my friend. We're going to close it off.
Awesome.
Bye
Thank you.
now.